In Canada, I'm very sorry to say there's no political leadership on the well-being of the future of this planet. And neither the present Prime Minister nor the Prime Minister, Mr. Ignatieff, who would like to be elected Prime Minister, show any significant concern with fitting the Canadian economy into a conception of the economics and the earth that will lead to a flourishing earth. So we'll get back to this later, but if there's going to be significant change in Canada on this kind of a question, it looks like it will have to come from outside, perhaps from mimicking the United States, if the United States does provide leadership in this area. Not clear yet if it will. Or from the actions of individuals pressing on the government for a significant policy change. What's it for? How does it work? How big is too big? What's fair? And how should it be governed? So what's it for? The answer given by mainstream economists is not an intelligent thing to want, basically, right? This particular goal is not what we should be aiming at. And the principal thing is to increase the well-being of people through consumption and through increasing their disposable incomes, at the same time having high levels of employment, low levels of inflation. And the principal measure of success is the GDP measure, the gross domestic product measure, which are falling in many countries. And this has, since about September or so, dominated the news, right? That this is happening, and this has brought about some extraordinary behavior on the part of people in the United States Treasury, at the Federal Reserve, and in many other countries. Vast resources are being thrown at the problem of restarting this growth machine. So our argument really is, in a way, derives from an argument of John Maynard Keynes. Keynes was principally concerned, in my view, in the formulation of his economic theory in a book called A General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, published in 1936, in preventing social instability and preventing war. And he aimed for a way of managing the economy that would manage the business cycle to keep the business cycle relatively flat, so that you wouldn't have high levels of unemployment and violence. So what Keynesian theory is designed to do is to kind of keep this kind of stability going. But the problem, one of the problems with this theory is that it left out the world, basically. It didn't take into account the need to preserve the stability and long-term, at least rough equilibrium of ecological systems. Just looked at the problem of the management of social systems. So our argument's really quite simple. It just says, well, okay, now let's broaden this conception of where we're aiming at a kind of rough stability into thinking about how the whole planet is managed, or how we react to the planet. We really can't manage the planet, how we live on the planet, so that we can have a flourishing life ourselves, and that the other species can live in the same way. And this is not a new idea. It's a very, very old idea, found in many of the world's religions, in many of the world's indigenous cultures. And so it basically says that the economy should be guided by an ethic of respect and reciprocity with the planet on which we live. Because nature is a set of systems, not a set of interchangeable parts. Right? And so the notion that we're going to have a little park over here and a little forest preserve over there and a marine protected area here, and then we're going to have a neat planet in the future, is a fraud. So what we propose is the economy should be seen as a subset of the biosphere and the sociosphere, so reversing these relationships. And that the basic unit of wealth is not money, but is is basically biosynthetic capacity, the ability of green plants to turn sunlight into sugar, if you get it down into a single sentence, right? This is what makes everything that we value on the earth possible, and what makes us possible. One of the things that's important to think about is what is money? And money is lots of different things. It turns out to be a very complicated question, what is money? But what we're proposing is that, in part at least, money is the right to interfere in the Earth's life support systems. Right? So when you purchase something, when you take an airline flight, when you buy, a pound of hamburger or something, you're intervening indirectly in the ability of the Earth to sustain a flourishing life system. And if you think of it that way and you realize how unequal the Earth's distribution of wealth is, you can see that some people intervene a lot in the Earth's life support systems, and some people don't intervene very much at all. Right? And so we have to think about money and how we govern it in a very different way. Under the topic of how does it work, current economic system makes no systematic connection to the findings of contemporary science. Okay, so this is a system that's pretty much flying blind in terms of how it relates to where it is. So it's true, I believe, it's a very astonishing sentence to be able to say, but I'm convinced it's true, that no systematic connection between the discipline of economics and the last 200 years of scientific discovery, with the exception of a branch of economics called ecological economics, which has no significant purchase on the policy process at this time. Okay, so they're basically lost, right? They want to govern the planet, right, but they don't really understand what it is or where they are. You can't be too big, in their view, unless economic growth causes inflation, in which case there should be a tampering with interest rates to bring the interest rates down a little bit so that the growth rate slows and so that inflation slows a little bit. But there's no biophysical shut-off valve. There's no such thing as too big. And here's a chart. Here's a series. I don't know if you can see these. This is taken from a really excellent book by Gus Speth called The Bridge at the Edge of the World, published by Yale University Press. And this is paper consumption. This is motor vehicles. This is loss of ecosystems, local biodiversity loss. The takeaway message from this chart is that everything has the same shape, basically, right? That's the only message you have to get. Are either in steep decline or in rapid expansion. And so, as Gus says, all we have to do to make the planet unlivable by the end of this century is to keep doing what we're already doing, right? We don't have to really ramp it up much, just keep doing this. But, of course, we are ramping it up, right? We're ramping it up on purpose, right? That's the goal of economic policy, is to make all of these lines, at least the ones that would be considered positive, go up. So when's the economy too big? We say it's too big when it overwhelms the ability of the Earth to support complex and abundant life, and when it overwhelms the ability of the Earth's living and non-living systems to assimilate waste products. But people in general, human beings, us, right, are taking up about 50% of the Earth's life support capacity. 50% of the products of photosynthesis are used directly or indirectly by us. We're one species out of 10 to 90 million, depending on how you want to count this and who you listen to. We're taking half the cake.